Afternoon. Good to see each and every one of you. Thank you for the wonderful meal and the time of fellowship. Enjoyed that. It's good to be with you. And I'm honored, very honored to be here. You are important in making a great difference in this old, broken world where we so badly need the gospel. God willing, in October, my lovely wife and I were married for 46 years. That's a long time. And we've never had an argument. Boy, did I just tell a lie. We've had some whoppers. Reminds me of this young couple. They were in love and everything that they did and touched was wonderful. He, so darling, I love you so much. You made me cornflakes. And just happy and loving until one day they had a fight. They had an F-I-G-H-T fight. And he got mad. He got really mad. He looked at her and I said, I don't know how anyone so beautiful could be so dumb. Without batting an eye, she said, because God made me that way. He said, what? Because God made me that way. Well, what do you mean? She said, well, God made me beautiful so you would love me, and God made me dumb so I'd love you. We have conflicts in marriage. We have conflicts everywhere. People are people wherever you go. Not all conflicts are bad. Sometimes you got to get it out. You've kind of kept it inside and you haven't talked about it. And so when you're able to discuss it and air it, often that can be not a bad thing, but a good thing, so long as it's constructive rather than destructive. Conflicts, when they're happening, at least they're not hidden and they can be dealt with in an effective and productive way. Think about what Jesus said. If your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he hears you, you've gained your brother. If he hears you not, take with you one witness or two, that mouth of two witnesses or three, every word may be established. And if you hear them not, tell it to the church. If he hears not the church, let him be unto you as a heathen or a publican. Verily, verily, I say unto you, whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. If the two of you can agree as touching anything, it'll be granted them. For two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. Matthew 18:15-20. What's the Lord saying here? He's saying that when we have a conflict, the best thing to do is go directly to the source and talk about it. You don't talk to your neighbor. You don't talk to your friends. You don't spread what a bad guy or girl this is. You directly talk to that individual. I would say 90, maybe 95% of the time that'll settle it. Two good, honest Christian people, they'll forgive each other, they'll pray over it, and they'll just let it go. And it would be wonderful if that's the way it happened all the time. It would be wonderful if people could be that loving and that direct. I call it loving confrontation. A friend of mine and his wife got into an argument. They're a great couple. And she's got that red hair. And that red hair was flying. And she got a little mad. And her tone got a little rough. And he looked at her and said, honey, don't talk to me like you don't love me. It's pretty good. When we do have loving confrontation, we need to remember to talk to one another like we love one another. And the idea of one witness or two is borrowed from the Old Testament. It's in Deuteronomy 17:6, and then in Deuteronomy 19:15, where judicially you cannot convict a person on the word of one witness. The mouth of two witnesses or three, every word must be established. It's got to be beyond just a rumor of one person. So, failing that, you tell it to the church. Doesn't hear that individual, doesn't hear the two or three, tell the church. If he hears not the church, then be to you as a heathen or a publican. This is the withdrawal of fellowship. But then what Jesus says after this is so important, and we commonly skip over it. Listen to it. Whatsoever you shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatsoever you shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. If the two of you can agree as touching anything, it shall be granted to you, for two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in their midst. He's not talking about a church service. He's talking about working out a problem with a brother or a sister. And listen to what he says. He says, if you bind it on earth, he'll be bound in heaven. He says, if you loose it on earth, he'll be loosed in heaven. In cornbread English, any honorable way you can work this out, I will accept it. That's how important this fellowship is to God. That's how important it should be to us. When we talk about this in a very practical way, I want to take a look at it from the aspect of communication, from the aspect of contribution, the aspect of conquering it, and then to concur or to come to an agreement. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about communication. Communicating. First, I will seek to be understanding, and only then to be understood. First, I will seek to be understanding, and only then to be understood. Listen to James. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For the wrath of man does not achieve the righteousness of God. I will listen. What do? Most of us are thinking, okay, how can I zing you back? You've said something to me, I'm going to zing you back. And we don't really listen to the other person. It's important that we listen. I honor you when I will listen to you. Dr. H. Norman Wright, in his book on communication, says, communication is a process of sharing yourself both verbally and non-verbally in such a way the other person both accepts and understands what you said. Doesn't mean they agreed to it. Because with no listening, there's no communication. You cannot communicate if you don't listen. And one of the ways in which you really calm a situation down is when you honor the person to listen to him or her. That's really powerful. Solomon said, he that answers a matter before he hears it, to him it is shame and folly. Proverbs 18:13. Don't answer a matter before you hear it. Listen. Listen, communicate. In his little book on communication, Dr. Wright says 7% of our communication 101 is content. It's the actual words we use. It has a less than 10% impact on what we communicate. Secondly, is tone of voice. He says tone of voice is 38% of our communication. The way we express our words has more than 5 times the impact of the actual words themselves. People tend to listen to tone more than words. I don't know how many times in my marriage my wife says, you sound angry. Honey, I'm not angry. Well, you sound angry. Well, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound angry. We've got to try to get that tone. Tone is so important. I can say the same word and change the tone and change the meaning. Honey, I love you. Or, honey, I love you. Well, said the same words, but they communicate something completely different because of the insincere tone the second time. And then the body language is 55% of total communication. Am I attentive? Am I listening to every word? Am I honed in on what you're telling me? Or do I have my arms crossed and I act bored? What do our eyes say? Are we leaning forward in deep concentration and attention, or are we slump back and disinterested? The key is you want to be a complete communicator, where your words, your tone of voice, your body language are all powerfully communicating what you mean. And as you communicate, it's important that we understand what the person meant. Honey, what I heard you say was this. Is that right? Oh, no, I didn't mean that at all. No, you misinterpreted what I meant. No, I didn't mean that. And you save a lot of problems right there. Second thing this afternoon is contribute. And what do we mean by contribute? We mean give in. There's nothing wrong with giving in every time it's right. In Exodus chapter 4, verses 24 to 26, God sought to kill Moses. Why did he seek to kill Moses? Because his boy Gershom was not circumcised. And you can't have the leader of Israel in open rebellion to God and not circumcising his boy. And so Scripture says God sought to kill him. Sephirah cut the foreskin off of Gershom and threw it at Moses' feet and said, "You are a husband of blood to me." It just disgusted her, but she did it because she knew it was right. There's nothing wrong with giving in every time it's right. It's not about who's right, it's about what's right. Again, it's not about who's right, it's about what's right, and for us to line up with what God has said and what is right. Our Lord taught principles in line with this concept. You go the second mile. If a man compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. This comes from the Romans. The Romans would conquer a city and they would put a yoke in the center of town. And then from that yoke in the center of town, they would go down a road and mark off miles. And then they could come up to a conquered citizen, a Roman official, a soldier, and compel that person to carry their pack 1 mile by law. Jesus said, if someone compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. What's he saying? He's saying, do what's required and then some. Boy, that'll be different. We're Christian people. We ought to be different. We ought to do what's required and then some. Well, that's powerful. And that will help solve a lot of problems. How about the golden rule? Whatsoever therefore ye would that men do to you, do even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. I'm going to treat you like I want to be treated. Well, that'll end a lot of arguments. They'll contribute. They'll give in. That'll bless the world. And what about being a servant? Jesus said, the greatest among you shall be your servant. The first among you shall be your minister. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life a ransom for many. Pick your battles carefully and give in unless it's really important. Just give in. Okay, we'll do it your way. Another factor of solving problems is what I call conquer. Given all the troubles at Corinth, Paul urged Apollos to go there, 1 Corinthians 16:12. It would be good for you, Apollos, to go and visit them. Apollos was a mighty man in the Scriptures, eloquent, fervent in spirit, but only knew the baptism of John. It was not until Aquila and Priscilla took him aside privately and taught him more excellently the way of the Lord Acts 18:26. Armed with this knowledge, he went out and mightily convinced the Jews publicly, showing by the scriptures that Jesus was the Christ. He was so well known in Corinth, Paul used him illustratively, along with Cephas, to demonstrate the dangers of division. He said, I show these things in figures, both of Cephas and Apollos, that you might not be puffed up, you might not be further involved in warfare, rather than naming the parties that actually were causing the schisms. I didn't want to cause further divisions. Well, they knew Apollos, and he said, need you to go there, Apollos. Apollos said, I can't go now, but I will go when it's a convenient time. See, there's a win-win here. I can't go now, but I will go when I can. Try that win-win scenario. Well, honey, we went to my folks last Thanksgiving. Let's go to your folks this Thanksgiving. Tell you what, we'll go to their house this Thanksgiving, your folks Christmas. Try the win-win. We'll go to Florida this year, but we'll go to Colorado next year. The key here is fairness, equity, and not equality, at least in the long run. And sometimes we've just got to agree to disagree. You're not always going to solve the disagreement. And sometimes we just have to agree to disagree. Paul and Barnabas went back a long way. In Acts 9:26 and 27, the Jews wanted nothing to do with Saul of Tarsus. It was not until Barnabas, the son of exhortation, endorsed him they were willing to have fellowship with Saul of Tarsus, later Paul. So Barnabas is absolutely important in the mission team of Paul and Barnabas. Around the spring of AD 48, they went on their first missionary journey, Acts 13 and 14. Then they went to the Jerusalem Council, stand up for the many Gentiles that come to faith. And they're ready for their second missionary journey, but they had a strong dispute over John Mark, the cousin of Barnabas. Colossians chapter 4 and verse 10. So they had a strong dispute. What are we going to do with Barnabas and Saul? What are we going to do with John Mark? See, Paul didn't like the idea of taking him along because he deserted them at Perga and Pamphylia. He didn't want to take him. He left. I don't know if he got homesick. I don't know if he got afraid of the huge mountains ahead of him. I don't know what it was. But John Mark went home. Barnabas, probably because he's related, thought, well, we ought to be more gentle with him. He'll come through this time. Paul didn't think that was a good idea. And the dispute was so sharp between the two that they parted asunder. Paul took with him Silas, revisited the churches, and Barnabas took with him John Mark and went to Cyprus. Sometimes you just got to agree to disagree. We just can't come together, so we're going to agree to disagree. In his farewell epistle, Paul talks about John Mark affectionately. He says, bring Mark with you, for he is useful to me for ministering. How do you feel when someone calls and tells you how you ought to feel, how you ought to think? Do you make others feel this way? How does it make you feel when someone genuinely listens to you? I mean, they really take in what you're saying. They really hear you. Doesn't that make you feel valued and honored? Do you listen to others like that? Do you value and listen to them? Do you listen to others attentively? And who usually gives in during your conflicts? And when's the last time you've given in? Why not give in every time it's right? And why is it that selfishness is at the root of most conflicts. Most of the time, you bore that thing down to its bottom line, selfishness has reared its ugly head. As Christian people, we want to be unselfish people. We want to be people after God's heart. And we want to be a people that really care. We care about you. Thank you. You've listened so attentively. If we can serve you this afternoon, if you need to be baptized to Christ, we'd love to assist you with that. If you need prayer, we'd love to assist you with that. And I hope that you can take some of this and help resolve whatever conflicts are in among you. Can we serve you even right now while we stand and sing to encourage you?